Hello, hello, hello. So today, me and SATs are going to be going over a very special development in World of Warships is the fact that coming in 14.6, so in July in closed testing, is going to be a new cruiser line that's going to be having controlled secondaries. You heard me right. Manual secondaries are coming to World of Warships officially in closed testing coming up in July. And the line is going to be a new German cruiser line. It's going to be starting at tier 6, going up to tier 10. It's going to be the Prinz Adelbert. It's going to be a pretty much a line focusing on the improved HE penetration of the secondaries with the hydroacoustics. It's meant to be having a more solid protection and doing a lot more brawling. So the gun ranges aren't going to be that great, but the secondaries are going to be very strong on these cruisers. So pretty much, if you like the Schroeder, you're going to love this new line when it comes out from what Wargaming is saying. So this is a really spicy development. This whole dev blog we're going to be going over today. So let's get started. So like I was saying before, they have announced a whole new line of German cruisers. The Deutschland Admiral Scheer, the Niesbeck, the Manteuffel, and the Prinz Adalbert. Now I'll let SAT Score explain how the manual secondaries kind of work.
Okay, so what I'm saying here is in the dev blog, so if you want to read it for yourself, go ahead and check it out. And in any case, the important aspects of the manual control secondary batteries per wargaming, so you will be able to swap between main and secondary battery controls. So it's, for example, like how destroyers have main battery guns and torpedoes, you can switch between the main guns and the secondary guns, kind of like that. If you're not using the secondary batteries, then they just behave like any other secondary batteries. They just shoot whenever someone's in range. The main guns will also track the crosshair while you're operating the secondary battery, which is actually pretty cool. So say, for example, you're shooting your secondaries at a ship, and then you want to switch to your main gun and shoot them right as they reload, you can do that. And then when you're switching to your manual control of your secondaries, they get a slight buff and improvement. For the cruisers, currently this results in a small buff to the range of the secondary guns. When the manual control is active, the secondary mounts do not have an angle of fire on the crosshair, and the secondary mounts that do not have the angle on the crosshair will not automatically target or fire upon ships.
So
What it's saying,
yes.
basically what it's saying is, if the secondary does not have the arcs to fire at one target at where you're shooting, it will not shoot at anything else. Period.
Yeah, so say you have you're aiming off of the port side of your ship with the secondaries. So the starboard side secondaries will not fire at enemies that are on that side. It will only try to fire the secondaries that are on the port side or the guns that are able to be aimed. So it makes it where instead of having all of your secondaries being able to go off, it'll pretty much be treated like main guns, to where only the guns that are able to be aimed at the target will be able to actually shoot. If they cannot be aimed at the target, then they're not able to be shot. So pretty much the manual secondaries are going to be treated just like main guns whenever you do have them being selected, which is a very interesting, cool mechanic they'll be adding to this new line. This new line also has access to torpedoes as well, so they're going all out for this new line to be a very strong brawler cruiser line, which a lot of people have been wanting. They've been wanting a kind of strong. One thing is people have been wanting a new German cruiser line in WoWs for a very, very, very long time. And I think this is the perfect line that they could have done. Because when you think German cruiser line, right? Like when you want a German cruiser, right? You don't want to, a lot of people don't think of it being like a smoke cruiser line or a long range sniping line or a heavy HE throwing line, right? They want a brawler line. A lot of the German ships are designed around being brawlers, getting into that fight, being close range, not far away. So having that characteristic stay with the Germans is a really good decision by World of Warships, and I have heard nothing but praise from the community for this new mechanic, and along with the ships that they're adding as well. It both keeps the characteristics of the German Navy as they have been in the game, and it adds in a new mechanic without it being too gimmicky. So it's different, but it's also not too gimmicky, which is a huge plus for WoWs.
Yep. And I do like that it's using the pocket battleship, the pocket battleship concept,
Yep.
i.e., like Admiral Graf Spee, as the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Because before she was removed from sale, the Graf Spee is actually a pretty popular Tier 6 ship. And we saw a couple of premiums based off of that, namely the Shill, but no one ever plays Shill now. So it's nice to see Wargaming kind of using her hull as a concept for a whole line of brawling cruisers, which they've tried brawling cruisers in the past with pre-release variants of the Aegir and Siegfried, but those didn't really pan out. So it's nice to see Wargaming trying again with this current line. And of course, starting off with one of a rather famous German class, the Deutschland.
So to go over a few of the characteristics of this new cruiser line, they're very tanky, heavy cruisers, like as a T-Score said, pocket battleships. The Graf Spee, or the Tier 6, well, the Graf Spee clone in a sense, the Admiral Reinhardt is going to have 6 283mm guns. And I'm going to be saying for all the consumables. So all of the consumables are the same for the whole, from the Tier 6 all the way down to the Tier 10. So it has a fast damage control team that has a 10-second duration for the damage control party, and it has a reload of 40 seconds. And you get 4 charges on the Tier 6, and you do get a heal, which is really nice. And for the Tier 6, 7, you get a 5.5 kilometer hydro to spotting ships, which is really long range for a Tier 6 cruiser for hydro for ships. That's really long range.
For reference, mid-tier cruisers usually will get up to 4 kilometers. I think the German light cruisers still get 6, but otherwise, yeah, it is still super long. It's not quite the mainline German cruisers, but still quite good.
Yep. Starting at Tier 8 through 10 is when the hydro goes to 6 kilometers, which is really nice. You also...
Actually, no, never mind. It's actually the same as the mainline cruisers,
okay.
5.5. So my mistake.
Okay. You also get defensive AA as well, which helps against, if you're being aggressive and you're being attacked by a CV, so it does help out with that. These ships also get 6 kilometer anti-air. What? It gets some pretty good anti-air as well. 6 kilometers on a German cruiser? That's actually pretty good.
Kind of debatable, just because they're not really known for their AA power, and because the Hydro and the FAA shares the same slot, I think most people will go for the improved Hydro.
Oh, yeah, you're correct. They do share the same slot. My bad. That's slot 3. You're correct.
Yeah. Fortunately, we can't have everything here.
Yep, you only get the Hydro or the DFA. So unfortunately, you're going to have to pick that Hydro if you do decide to get this line. And I almost got really hyped there to have both Hydro and DFA. Ooh, that'd be kind of crazy. So
I mean, most people don't already see it as a basically a non-choice, so
yeah,
you're not missing it that much.
Yeah, exactly. So for the airstrikes, for the depth charges, you do get airstrikes. Very nice that you don't have to deal with the surface depth charges like the Schroeder does. So that is very nice. Wait, no, did the Schroeder get switched to aerial ASW, or was it still surface? I don't remember if it switched.
The main line did get switched to airstrikes. Let me double check with the Schroeder here. Schroeder is airstrikes.
Okay, that's good then. Okay, so that's good. Yeah, getting airstrikes for a brawler line is really important, so I'm glad that they kept that for these pocket battleships. That's really good. But overall, really massive W for World of Warships for this line. And of course, you guys can look at the dev log yourselves to see pictures of the ships and see the stats themselves, because we're not going to really go in depth on the stats themselves since there's a lot of stats. But I will say that the tier 10, the Prince Albert, is going to have the largest cruiser guns in World of Warships. If you don't count Vyazma, because Vyazma is an experimental ship, but for a tech tree line cruiser, it's going to have 350 millimeter guns. Woo, that is some big guns on a cruiser. It has 201 millimeter, as a 201 meter dispersion with a 2.1 sigma. So that sigma is pretty nice.
2.1 sigma on battle cruiser dispersion.
Yep. I think that's pretty good. The range on the guns are 18.2 kilometers, which is what they said was more of the ship's specialty, being a close range ship. It's not meant to be long range, so that kind of speaks in that.
It's a bit of an irony, I think, just because Hindenburg's base range is somewhere around 17, and it's actually outranges a couple of the older cruisers like Des Moines and Zhao. So I find that kind of odd.
Now, on the tier 10 as well, it does have 37% torpedo protection. That's a lot of torpedo protection on a heavy cruiser.
It's pretty solid for a tier 10. Let me double check. I'll compare it to other cruisers here in a sec, because that sounds like it's pretty high.
Yeah.
That's more than Curvefist, for example.
It is. Yeah. It also has 63,900 HP, and and this line does have a 60 second fire duration due to it being a pocket battleship. So it doesn't have the short fire cruisers. Sorry for the duration.
Fire resist.
Yeah. So normally
it's the long one like battleships,
yeah,
which
exactly.
is a big downside.
Yeah, it is, but it also kind of makes sense with the fact that these things are referred to as pocket battleships.
So the torpedo belt is actually, if it goes in with that current torpedo protection, it will tie Hildebrand at being the having the strongest torpedo protection at 37.
Yeah, that's really good.
So yeah, as you said, their stats looks like it's maybe befitting them of pocket battleships.
And with this new secondary line as well, since they did say that this line is going to have the improved HE pen, you don't have to build into IFHE into this line. For an example, the tier 10 and the tier 9 have secondaries that are at 32 millimeter HE pen and 38 millimeter HE pen, which means that you can pretty much pin the bow or aft of pretty much every battleship and cruiser, unless it has like an armored bow. And it also allows you to do a lot of damage to cruiser decks or superstructures really easily, and just absolutely melt destroyers as well. That 32 millimeter for the HE pin is kind of that magic number for making you be able to do like, it's okay amount of damage to a lot of damage. Because a lot of people will try to sit bow in, or a lot of battleships will just sit bow into you thinking, oh yeah, well he can't pen me with HE, and then you just absolutely melt them with that raw HE DPM. Will melt anything if you can actually pen it, which you can pen a lot. Montanas, Conquerors, top bow, the Kremlin, Yamatos, anything with a 32 millimeter bow, you're going to be able to melt right through with those secondaries.
It has 8.3 kilometer range, which is the same base range as Schlieffen, so you can get your secondaries out to 12.5 at baseline. So, but since the dev block says if you melee control, you can fire a bit further, that seems to imply that can go even further. That being said, we're not entirely sure how all of this actually works out, so it could be a little bit different once it hits live or testing.
Yep, for sure. Now, one thing to note as well is that people may be concerned about this being, oh, it's another secondary W win line, right? It's like so easy to do, right? What makes this harder is the fact that you have to get the full benefit of these secondaries. You have to control them manually. So you can't just let the AI gunners do everything. If you want the full benefits of the ship, of this line, you have to manually control the secondaries. Now, of course, you can still go in, W in, and not use the manual secondaries and just let the AI gunners do everything, right? But if you want the full benefits, you have to use the secondaries themselves, which, you know, you have to aim, you have to do a lot of coordination with everything else that's going on in the match, and that's going to take a lot of skill to micromanage all of your different armaments, which will make this line more difficult to play. So I see it as a higher skill level secondary line. Also, the potential for memes are going to be massive for this line. I'm really excited to, whenever it comes out, to try to do some kind of smoke meme with it, like a vampire meme or something like that in some kind of regard. Ooh, that's going to be a lot of fun to try out.
Given the initial stats, it kind of looks like it's a mini Sleefin if you think about it. It has a fast damage control team, just like Sleefin.
Yep.
You only have a normal repair party, which is actually a big problem here. So unlike the Libertad, you only get the normal repair party. So given that it's likely using the cruiser hull and probably has 27mm armor, that's you're going to end up taking more damage when you're going in. So that's a big thing to consider. Like, if you're going to have a mini Sleef, given how Sleefin performs in the current randoms meta, the Adalbert may have that same problem, which may work to her benefit, which may not necessarily work to her benefit. Like, if you're a mini Sleefin, and you essentially get focused even harder, that's not going to end well for you. But we'll see, because it definitely differs in notable areas that might just make it more successful.
All right. So, in this dev blog, they introduced the new German line, right? But they've also introduced a few other ships as well that we'll talk briefly about before we end today's video. So, first up, they introduced a tier 10 Japanese cruiser that has a exhaust smoke, the Kushiro. And I'll let SAT Score talk about the Kushiro a little bit before we move on to the next ship.
Okay, so I'll just read off the dev block here. Kushiro will be enjoyable for fans of Japanese heavy cruisers, with her good HE shell characteristics and torpedoes. Compared to Zhao, she has a stronger set of consumables, including an improved repair party, with faster cooldown and better hit point recovery. Additionally, she retains typical Japanese cruiser consumables of Hydro, DFAA, and Spotter Fighter. But of course, you add the exhaust smoke on top of that, which is kind of crazy for a Japanese ship. This is literally the same thing you find on the Italian cruisers. However, what holds her back is the slow turret traverse speed. So let me double check here. It's 30 seconds, which is honestly not that bad. A large turning circle, which is... I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling down to see what the turning circle is. 860, which is not... that's pretty bad for a cruiser.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty big.
Yeah, and lower than average torpedo range, which is 8 kilometers. Yeah, combined with our large citadel, which means you have to be very careful to avoid heavy damage. That being said, the slow traverse speed in a large turning circle I don't think is that bad. Like, the turning circle I think is about roughly the Shinano, the Yodo, in terms of turning radius. Zhao has 840. It's not even that bad, actually. Zhao's turning radius is 840. The Kushiro is 860. So it's honestly not even that bad. The lower than average torpedo range is a big drawback, though, because you're essentially getting F3 torpedoes. well, oh well. You just effectively don't have torpedoes. But in exchange, you're getting fuel smoke, which is pretty insane if you get caught by wind. That means that you can turn out much safer than Zhao could ever do. So I think it seems like on paper, it just looks a little bit stronger than Zhao. Of course, they do note her larger citadel, which means you can probably get the strike even faster than Zhao does. At least Zhao has her troll moments where you just randomly overpen. But it sounds like the Kushiro will have like that citadel is like a Goliath citadel. It's like you get hit there, it's game over no matter what.
Yeah, I like ships that are punished for showing broadside, but the ship does have that smoke as well, which will save it a lot. So I'm glad that they did do that for this ship. So moving on from the Kushiro, we're going to be talking about, they also introduced the new Italian super battleship, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, the Affinatore. It is going to be, yeah, it is going to be the Italian version of the maximum battleship concept. A ship with unlimited displacement with extremely powerful artillery armament. And this ship, oh boy, this thing is a monstrosity. It has 115,000 HP with a 31% torpedo protection. It has 16 406 millimeter guns. And before anybody asks, the guns are AP and HE. So Wargaming has taken the community's input on the Colombo, and they've taken SAP off of it. Thank God. And this ship does
remove the spiciness.
Yep, they did. So just imagining having 16 SAP guns, 406 millimeter guns. Any cruiser would just be suffering. But again, we've seen what 16 406 millimeter guns can do. If you look over at like the main, that thing is a monster in its own right. So this thing is going to be, we'll see how it does. Similar to that, we'll see. But this ship is definitely more of a secondary super ship, and I'll explain why, because it talks about the combat instruction. So the combat instruction is called direct control over secondary battery crews. It makes it where when you hit enemy ships with the main battery shell, it goes quicker by 3.5%, and the action time is 45 seconds. When it's active, it makes the secondary reload faster by 75%. The HE shell armor penetration up by 100%, and the maximum secondary dispersion shell is by 80%. So you get 75% faster reload on the secondaries, 80% more accurate, and 100% more pen for the HE. And on top of that, the ship's speed is increased by 10% during that 45-second period. So they were like, oh yeah, we know how people love Colombo, right? They love Colombo. So let's make a giant Colombo with AP instead of the SAP. And then let's just make secondaries. But yeah, overall, really excited for this overall. I cannot wait for this ship to come out. It's going to be a lot of fun for sure. Also, SAT scores having issues with the call, unfortunately. But yeah, Discord is being Discordy. So, quite unfortunate. But overall, I'm very excited for this.
Yeah.
Oh, it's better now. Okay, cool. Welcome back. But yes, this ship also gets exhaust smoke, a nice heal, and damage control party as well. So overall, I'm really excited for this ship to come out for that super Colombo. Overall, it looks like they're trying to bring in a secondary super battleship, and this definitely hits the spot for those secondary brawler mains for sure. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this new Italian monstrosity?
It feels like this ship is more German. It does a better job of being a German brawler than Hanover itself, which is kind of funny to think about.
Mm-hmm.
So, So there's some important things to note. The combat instruction specifically buffs secondaries.
Yep.
But there's an important caveat here. So we know that Italian battleships are notoriously inaccurate, even when using the main battery, the aiming systems upgrade in slot 3.
Yep.
So there's a problem here. You can either choose aiming systems. You can choose to get the improved accuracy or the improved secondary range. You cannot have both since they are both in slot 3.
Yep.
That is a kind of a big problem because otherwise, yeah, Montana, the main has its accuracy upgrade in slot 6 and it's improved. So that's why main is such ridiculous sniper, even with its lower sigma. But Affrontatore does not get that. You basically kind of get like you pretty much get pre-Colombo dispersion, and a little bit worse technically because you don't get aiming systems. As for the secondary battery, as for activating instructions, it looks like you need 29 hits from the main battery. Which doesn't sound bad when you have 16 shells, but remember, you don't get you're probably not going to run aiming systems, so that means you're going to, it's going to be taking even longer to get all the hits you need. Granted, and you also start losing progress after 60 seconds. Since your reload is 35, you don't get that much leeway before if you miss a shot completely, then your combat instruction is going to start depleting, and that's not particularly great.
Yeah, no, it's not.
And the worst part about it is your secondary range isn't that high. 7.3 is not the 8.3 that the German battleships get, or some other ships. So I think that tops out at roughly about 11. That is a big 11 but versus 12.5 is a big difference in terms of secondaries. And on top of that, if you decide to go with aiming systems, that's going to decrease it even lower to about 9ish or so, 9.3. So you really have to make some choices here on what you want your Affrontatore to do, because if you invest in the main battery all the way, that means your secondary range is going to top out at 9 at most, which is very hard to do, which is not very easy to get in a tier 10 game. But on the other hand, if you do decide to go spec in the secondaries and get it up to 11 kilometers, then your main battery is going to be less accurate, so you're going to be partially suffering outside of that. Of course, at the end of the day, you are playing a super battleship, and no cruiser really wants to tank 16-gun salvo from your 16-inch guns. And of course, you do get fairly good armor, at least according to Wargaming, and fuel smoke. So you still have a lot of things you can do. It's just that ultimately, if you want to play as a brawler or a main gun specialist, is kind of up to you.
But yeah, so that is the Super Colombo. And all these ships are going to be going into testing in patch 14.6 in July, in closed testing. They also did showcase pictures of the tier 10 Soviet battleship, the Sibir, and the tier 10 French cruiser, the Admiral Lortiu. So if you guys want to look at those pictures as well, it is going to be in the dev blog. That'll be in the description of this video. But yeah, we'll just talk shortly about the Sibir. Essentially, the Sibir is the brawler Kremlin. It has that new experimental, there's something that really they're testing out, the toggable heal, the toggable consumable mechanics that they're trying to introduce into WoWs. Overall, I think the new toggable heal that they're testing on the Sibir could be really good. They're turning the Sibir from, it's like they're having three kind of Kremlin-style ships, SAT. They have the Brawler, which is the Sibir, the middle range, just kind of tanky one, the Kremlin, and then they have the Sniper, the Slava. So they have the 3 different play styles of the Kremlin, in a sense. You got the sniper, you got the tanky middle area, and then you got that brawler and with the Sabir. So I'm really excited to see how that ship does when it does come out. But we'll just have to see it when it actually does. So far, we have no idea what the resources will be before, but it is exciting to see how it actually turns out when it does come out.
What do you think overall about this dev block? Do you like it?
Overall, this is a very positive dev blog. I'm very excited for pretty much every ship on this list. So overall, this is a very, very positive dev blog. We've had a few really strong dev blogs recently for WoWs, with new ships that are coming out that are adding a little bit of excitement to the game. And these aren't like super gimmicky ships. They're different. I think the only gimmicky one would be the Kushiro. Like, it's a little bit gimmicky with that exhaust smoke, but everything else seems different, which is what people want. They want different without it being too gimmicky.
They want a different yet same at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, to be honest, pretty hard to do.
It is, but I think they hit it spot on with this cruiser line, the Super Colombo, and the Sabir. I think they've done a very good job with that.
I hope this continues on once the ships go into testing and eventually early access. And I'm pretty sure we'll be doing another preview of those ships once they hit the PTS and eventually early access.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure you will be doing that.
Yeah, I will be for sure. But anyway, thank you guys all for watching today's video. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you guys like the video. Make sure to subscribe. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Deuces.